There we go. Hey guys, Dr. Nathan Thompson here with the Wellness Way Yorkville. Happy Monday evening. Sorry, where everything is cranking away here. So happy Monday evening. Thank you for joining this live broadcast. The topic we're going to be going over tonight is fatigue. If you suffer with fatigue, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. And if you are watching live right now, go ahead and say hello. Also, let me know where you're watching from as well. I love to see people from all over the world as they watch these live broadcasts. Guys, this keeps me going. I promise you that. This keeps me going, knowing that I'm providing valuable information to you guys from, it might be 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 miles away. And so I'm happy to do that for you guys. And it keeps me going. It drives me and it gives me energy. This is a joy of mine, just so you guys know. This is a joy of mine, is going over this stuff with you. And as I learn and get better, I also want you to grow with me as well. So tonight we're going to talk about fatigue. So if you suffer from fatigue, give me a thumbs up or give me a wave and just say like, hey, I do. I'm going to show you where you need to be looking from when it comes to handling or tackling this whole idea when it comes to fatigue. Okay. All right, so let me make sure that I'm on the right slide. Here we go. Now, when you're talking about fatigue, the first thing that I will say is that fatigue can be multifactorial. There could be more than one thing that's going on, which is why everyone's looking for the secret pill, the secret drug, the secret formula that's going to take away all of their problems. And guys, it just doesn't work. I don't see it happening. And if it happens to take it away, then I'm going to go over that with you as well. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview of our inflammation talk that we have coming up. And I'll have a slide here just a second that'll explain that. But guys, one of the biggest things that I would tell you, this is actually at the root of the chiropractic principle. Okay. And a lot of times people say, hey, what do chiropractors do? Like, oh, they crack necks, they crack backs, and whatnot. And I'm like, truly, if someone is doing a great job, then they're truly actually taking care of all of the different areas where a person can get sick. Okay. So why am I sick? And the whole principle of chiropractic says this, is that the body is designed to be well. It's always trying to adapt. It's always trying to keep you alive. And in that process, it's trying to adapt as much as possible. And if a person is not healing, then one of the things you have to address that there may be too much mental, chemical, or physical stressors on the body. Yes, this is how this pertains to the spine and the nerve system. Nerve system is huge because high amounts of stress on the nerve system can impact hormones. Where your hormones originate from? They originate from the pituitary gland, which is the brain, which is why the more stressed you are, the more it's going to impact your hormones, okay? You also have to look at it chemically, and you also have to look at, this is why mental stress, I've talked about this a lot, can be an absolute killer. So why are you sick? There's an overabundance of mental, chemical, and physical stressors that the body can no longer continue to adapt to. And that's how you start to enter into a disease process. And this is why when you look at this whole process, this is why we do an inflammation talk. Our next one in person, guys, is going to be Tuesday, March 12th at 6:00 p.m. If you are from the Chicagoland area, please go to the top of the page. If you're watching on Instagram or if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see our link tree or on Facebook, and you'll be able to go and register directly for that event. This is an in-person event if you're from the Chicagoland area. And we talk about this principle as well and how you need proper testing. And so this is really for anybody who is suffering with weight loss resistance, heck, even cancer, problems with fertility, thyroid issues, chronic arthritis, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune disorders, even hormone disorders as well. And guys, the biggest thing I want to tell you is we don't try to treat those things. It's about identifying what's blocking health, work on doing that, because the natural consequence of the body is to be restored. Okay. So Tuesday, March 12th, this is an in-person event. And if you are from outside of the Chicagoland area, but you want to work with us, work with our approach, work with me directly, then here's what I want to do. And I message people probably 3 or 4 times every single week. Like, what do I need to do? Watch the webinar on inflammation. Okay. So these are for people who want to work with us remotely. watch the webinar on inflammation. Go to the top of the page and you'll be able to register for that webinar. When you click on it, choose a time that'll work for you. You can also watch it on demand. And if you watch it on demand, then you can watch it right away. Make sure you have an hour of your time. And at the end, there's going to be a link that you can schedule on our Calendly page and schedule a discovery call with me. Yes, that's with me. Okay. And when you schedule that call, you'll have an opportunity to be able to send the labs, be able to fill out some things so I get a better understanding of your health, what you've been through. Also be able to strategize, hey, what are your goals and what other testing do you might you need in order to get a better understanding of what's going on? And a lot of times the number one complaint that people have is they have fatigue. All right. So I'm trying to give you guys a little bit of help as far as what you can do in order to start helping what is causing fatigue and how do I start the process of actually getting better. Okay. Now, for those of you who are participating in our You Don't Know Squat Challenge, thank you so much for doing that. We started that on March 1st. And yes, I've got many rounds in of working on my squat mobility. If you're watching and you can see the slides, you can see that I was actually working on it today. So it's not too late to join, guys. It's never too late to join. And so you can join. You can see the video that we have on what you're supposed to be doing pinned to the top of all of our social media channels as well. But if you see this, you can see that I'm working on my squat mobility. I held a squat in that position for about 3 minutes today. I'm trying to go about 20 to 30 seconds longer each day. And you can see that my youngest son, Elias, he's given me a hand because he loves the kettlebell. He calls it a ball. He's absolutely obsessed with anything that is round, with any kind of a ball, basketball, baseball, like you name it. He's obsessed with it. And he loves basketball. So this is why we're hoping that he has received the genetics to grow to be 6'8", because there's a couple family members in our family who, yes, are in fact are that tall. I wasn't blessed with those genetics, but I hope he got those genetics so that he can grow to be 6'8" as well. And you can see in this picture that he's helping me. And today, by the way, is National Sons Day. Do you guys know that? It's National Sons Day. I didn't even realize that this was a holiday. Someone said Happy National Sons Day. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I should go and tell my sons that. Happy National Sons Day. And so you can see here that he's helping me. But if you haven't gotten involved with that, get involved with the You Don't Know Squat Challenge. And you'll be able to, even if you're starting late, it's okay, because not starting is worse than starting late is a lot better than just not starting. Okay. So just go ahead and get started with that. Okay. And so you can also get a t-shirt about the You Don't Know Squat Challenge. We have a lot of awesome t-shirts. And if you are watching the screen, you can go ahead and take your phone and you can scan that code and it'll actually take you to our, t-shirt store, and you can actually watch through that as well. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about fatigue. Okay. Now, if you suffer with fatigue, then it's important to ask yourself a couple of questions. Okay. You got to ask yourself a couple of questions. Here's the questions that I want you to ask yourself. Number one, how much inflammation in your body is present? Number two, do you currently have an infection? Okay. Do you have an active infection that's going on? Number three, are you on any medications? Because I love how people call them side effects. No, they're just effects. Can medications cause fatigue? Yes, I'm going to go over that. What about your hormones? And what about the level of stress that you are under? How's your thyroid doing? Are you sleeping enough? And yes, I know someone's going to ask this about iron. Iron plays a role in fatigue. Yes, it absolutely does. But if you are iron deficient, there's other problems that are going on, especially with stomach acid and iron consumption, or with your menstrual cycle and things like that. So you got to ask yourself all of those different questions. And if you can't answer those questions, then you suffer with fatigue, then you probably need to get the right amount of testing or the right testing. Okay. All right, so let's talk about reasons for fatigue. And it's never, guys, usually just one thing. It's multiple things that are going on. I'll explain to that in just a second. So the first thing you have to look for is you have to look at inflammation, okay? You have to look at inflammation. Here's a lab test of a young girl who came in who is suffering with just red, inflamed skin, puffiness, and no energy. And so we did some testing. One of them included a stool test. And if you look on this test, you can see that her fecal secretory IgA was through the roof. Okay. It was at 3,876, and you don't want that to be even higher than about 2,000. Okay. Now, a lot of this had to do with leaky gut, food allergies, and things like that. And we did a 4-week follow up. She's like, oh my gosh, my bloating is better. My skin is so much better. And I said, well, how's your energy? She's like, you know what? This is crazy, but my energy is so much better. And guys, there's a reason why people are fatigued when they're inflamed. Okay. And so this is why getting the right testing is so important, especially if you've worked with other doctors and they're just like, I have no idea what's going on, and they're just kind of just grabbing straws as far as what is going on inside the body. Here's another thing that's very important when it comes to inflammation. Here's some lab testing of a person who had fatigue, no energy, and also had a lot of joint pain that's going on. And if you look at her blood labs, one of the things that you're going to see elevated liver enzymes. You're also going to see high CRP, C-reactive protein, at 10. And this was not some kind of acute reaction. This was a very chronic reaction. This puts you at a very high risk of heart attack and stroke. And in fact, it's been proven that people with high CRP do have higher incidences of heart attack, cardiovascular disease, stroke, things like that. And it was also very deficient in vitamin D. But also, if you look at her thyroid, very poor thyroid function. In fact, there's an immune reaction that's taking place that's destroying her thyroid, which is why her thyroid levels were so low, and also very low in certain foundational hormones as well. And I want you to think about it. If we just pointed to one thing, she wouldn't get better. That's why you have to look at multiple things that are going on inside of the body. Okay. Now, here's an interesting article that comes from out of PubMed, Frontiers of Immunology, 2019. So it's about 4 years old. But here's where they start giving you clues. The role of inflammation in depression and fatigue. Okay, here's what they say. Depression and fatigue are conditions responsible for heavy global societal burden. I agree, absolutely, especially in patients already suffering from chronic diseases. So here's what they say is that fatigue and depression is very prevalent in people who are already sick. While many factors play a role in the development of depression and fatigue, both have been associated with increased inflammatory activation due to the immune system affecting both the periphery and the central nerve system, or the CNS. Higher levels of baseline inflammation predict lower treatment efficacy for most treatments. Isn't that interesting? But they're saying that, yes, inflammation plays a huge role in fatigue, and inflammation even plays a role in depression. This is why, guys, when you look at people and they're suffering with depression, did you know that the whole idea of serotonin and depression is just a theory? Just a theory. It's all it is. It's not proven, doesn't have any kind of, it's not substantiated with any kind of science. It's just a theory. But you do see people who are chronically fatigued and who are chronically depressed. They suffer for higher levels of inflammation and chronic disease that's going on. And they also say higher levels of baseline inflammation predict lower treatment efficacy for what? For most treatments. Meaning if you are very, very inflamed, then you have to ask the doctor, will this drug actually help me? And they have no idea. They say, well, we're going to give it a try. These results show strong support for the hypothesis that depression and fatigue are associated with an increased activation of the immune system, which may serve as a valid target for treatment. So here's what they say is that they may have gotten the reason right, but then they get the treatment all like where I disagree with 100%, meaning that what we need to do instead of targeting the reason why they're inflamed is just see if we can find new and novel drugs in order to target the immune system, to try to cut the tongue out so that the immune system can't do its job. Okay. So there is a role in depression and fatigue. with even inflammation. So you have to look at inflammation, guys. That's the first thing. Inflammation is the body's response to foreign invaders. And that could be a protein, like a food protein. That can be an infection. That can be a toxin. That can be, it's anything that's foreign to the body that gets exposed at the barrier that the immune system sees it, that activates the immune system. So number one, you have to look at inflammation. The second thing you have to look at is, do you have an infection that's going on? Okay. I want you guys to think about this. And a lot of times this makes sense to a lot of people. If you guys ever had the flu, or you even had the COVID, and you had an infection, and I want you to think about that. If you had an active infection that was going on, full-blown case of the flu, did you have bounding energy that wanted to get you out of bed? Chances are no. And in fact, you ask people if they had COVID or they had the flu, what did you want to do the most? And you know what they say? I wanted to sleep. And you're like, yeah, anytime that you have infection, you have high amounts of inflammation that's going on, and you're going to be tired and you're going to be fatigued. If you had the flu, you don't feel like going out and running a 5K at that point. What you have to do is you have to let your body handle that inflammatory process to handle the infection. And then you're going to see, as your body heals, the energy starts to go back up. So if you talk about infection and it's not getting better, then you have to ask the question, do you have a chronic infection? Do you have a chronic infection that's going on? So here are some common chronic infections. Number one, Epstein-Barr virus. Now, if I tested people, almost everybody by the time that they're 18, 20 years of age have been exposed to Epstein-Barr virus. However, it can reactivate when you are burdened with so much stress, and it lowers the immune response. And then what happens is that it starts to grow within the body. So do you have a chronic infection? And I've had people who have had debilitating fatigue. And when we tested them for certain immune responses going on, they came back as having an active infection of Epstein-Barr virus, which is why they call it chronic fatigue syndrome. Okay. How do you know if you have that or not? Then you test for it. Okay. But the other thing too is you may also be carrying infection within the gastrointestinal system. And who's most likely to carry an infection within the gastrointestinal system? I will tell you this: people with low stomach acid. So who are the people who have low stomach acid? People who have acid reflux, people on proton pump inhibitors. And in fact, if people are on proton pump inhibitors because the doctor put them on for acid reflux, I almost always will run a stool test to look for infection that's going on. And 9 times out of 10, they're carrying an infection. And the reason why is because stomach acid actually helps to sterilize your food. And if you can't sterilize your food, then you can let infection, you can be overrun with different types of infection that's taking place. And that's why stomach acid is so important as far as breaking down your proteins and also sterilizing your food. Okay. So do you have any kind of infection that's going on? Here's the third thing that I mentioned too, is medications. Are you on any medications? Here's some medications that historically are known to cause fatigue: blood pressure medications, antidepressants, antihistamines, and yes, even statin drugs. I'm going to go over statin drugs in just a second. Here's one of the biggest culprits is beta blockers. If you know anybody on beta blockers, please share this with them as well. Basically, what beta blockers do is they are blocking the ability of the body to be able to make epinephrine, norepinephrine, or adrenaline. Okay. And this is why when people, when they're on a beta blocker, and I'll ask them, hey, if you work out, do you have that next gear? And most of them are like, oh, no, I don't. So a lot of times if you see people that are on a beta blocker and they're trying to lift heavy or do some kind of CrossFit workout, is they just don't have that next gear. And in fact, they stare down at the barbell to lift that up and they get dizzy from it. Or if you have them rapidly going up and down, like with a burpee or something like that, it'll make them dizzy, or they're so fatigued and they don't have any kind of energy, from doing that. This is why, guys, if you look at people and they're getting dizzy all the time, there can be an adrenal component that's due to an inflammatory response. And I want you to think of it. High inflammation causes the adrenal glands to kind of do this as well. So look at blood pressure medications. Specifically, ask yourself, am I on a beta blocker? Um, Antidepressants can also cause low energy. Antihistamines can also cause low energy. And the reason why is histamines excite the brain, antihistamines block that. And this is why, if you're constantly on an antihistamine, look at some of these, the labels or the warning signs. They say, do not operate heavy machinery because you're going to be drowsy from doing that. And in fact, I spent about the first, excuse me, the first, you know, about 4 to 5 months out of every year kind of being drowsy because I had allergies so bad and I was on an antihistamine all the time, and it's blocking that response, and it cause the brain to become very fatigued as a result. And then I'm going to talk about statin medication. What I'm going to go over with you is going to absolutely make your jaw drop, I should say. Your jaw is going to drop doing this. Now, I know I'm going to have a lot of people and they're going to reach out to me. I'm not going to make a recommendation whether you should go off of that or not. This is what you talk to your doctor for about as well. But I'm going to give you how they work and why they can cause so much fatigue. Okay. Now, this right here, this is how cholesterol is produced, okay? Especially when you talk about the liver, how it's produced in the liver, okay? So I'm not going to go over every step, nor am I going to ask you to write all of that, write it down or to memorize it. But I want you to understand you're going to see something. This is why a lot of cholesterol meds or statin drugs are known as HMG-CoA reductase inhibitors, okay? So if you look at some of the most common statin medications, if I say what's the most common statin medications, you might say a Lipitor or something that has statin that's actually in it, in the generic name of it. So back in, about 20 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, all these medications started coming out and they saw how wonderful and how awesome that they are. But basically what they do is they inhibit this enzyme from everything getting made going down from that. So if you block it at one level, then you're going to be blocking everything downstream as well. Okay. So it inhibits the production of this enzyme. And I want you to think of this. When they're inhibiting the production of that enzyme, then downstream, what's going to happen is it's going to inhibit the production of what is known as CoQ10. It's going to inhibit the production of CoQ10. And this is what is responsible for aerobic metabolism of energy, including ATP. Okay. This is why one of the side effects of being on a statin medication is severe muscle weakness and muscle fatigue and muscle aches, because you are limiting the production of an enzyme that's responsible for the production of what is known as CoQ10. More information on that. Okay. So, in fact, what's so interesting is that you have a lot of people who will have side effects that have muscle aches from being on a statin drug. And rather than just say, you know what, I'm done with this. This is just nothing. This is malarkey. Then they just keep going back and the doctor puts them on another one and on another one and on another one, but says you need to be on your statin drug. This comes from right here, the 2003 Lipitor study. So this is actually an advertisement for Lipitor, and this is about 20 years old or so. And here's what they said. Lipitor reduces the risk of heart attack by 36%. You look at that, you're like, oh, well, that sounds like it's pretty good. Sign me up for it. And then when you look at the fine print, this one says that means in a large clinical study, which I have over here, you'll see on the slides to the left, that involved about 19,000 people. Lipitor reduces patients. Here's what they found. 3% of patients taking a sugar pill or a placebo had a heart attack compared to 2% of patients taking Lipitor. I really want you to think about that. So people taking the Lipitor for 3, 4, 5 years, they 2% had a heart attack. But if they're taking a sugar pill, 3% had a heart attack, and they go 3 into 2. That's a 36% reduction with that. But in reality, guys, I want you to think of this. The number needed to treat is actually 100. That means in order to prevent a death, the number needed to treat was 100 people had to be on this medication for a certain amount of time, which literally means the efficacy, the absolute risk reduction is 1%. The absolute risk reduction is 1%. Now, I want you to think of this. If you came in and you was like, hey, Dr. Thompson, I want you to test me. I need help. I'm having some problems with some certain things. And I said, sure, we'll test everything. and your chances of getting better is 1%, then you would say, find me somebody else. I'm not in this for 1%. I want it to be 100%. Yet you have millions of people taking a medication, not knowing that the actual risk reduction is 1%. 1%. And you have to take it forever. And this is why they're like, yeah, we should just put it in our drinking water. We'll just put it in our drinking water so that everyone's cholesterol levels are down to zero. And I've even heard certain people say your cholesterols could be at zero. And I'm like, yeah, show me what happens to your heart. Show me what happens to your muscle function. And if you had a problem with sore muscles, fatigue muscles, or fatigue in general, let me know in the comments as well. Okay. And the reason why is because it inhibits the production of CoQ10. So I started to dig a little bit deeper about CoQ10. And here's some research about it. The effect of coenzyme Q10 supplementation on fatigue, a systematic review of interventional studies. The conclusion says this: it seems that CoQ10 has better therapeutic effects in statin-related fatigue and fibromyalgia patients compared with other disease-related fatigue. Why is that? Because you know that a statin drug is directly inhibiting CoQ10 production, which is needed for aerobic metabolism. And you're going to notice it first in the muscles. And this is why some people notice it in the brain, and they notice brain fog and things like that. Okay. Now, here's another article from 2006, considerations for supplementing with coenzyme Q10 during statin therapy. Here's what they say. Statin therapy, statin therapy reduces blood CoQ10 concentrations. We already know that. And they say limited data suggests that patients with familial hypercholesterolemia, heart failure, or who are over 65 years of age might represent at-risk populations who could benefit from CoQ10 supplementation. Okay. And so there's a lot of studies that say it's limited data. We just don't know, but I'm going to show you why the data is so limited. Okay. So I went to Mayo Clinic. You know, if everybody's sick, Mayo Clinic is going to figure it out, and they're going to do all the testing. Then they're going to come back with a fancy diagnosis. And you know what their treatment is? Drugs. It's still going to be drugs. So here's what the Mayo Clinic says. Coenzyme Q10 is an antioxidant that your body produces naturally. Your cells use CoQ10 for growth and maintenance, and also for the production of ATP, which is energy. CoQ10 levels have been found to be lower in people with certain conditions, such as heart disease, and in those who take cholesterol-lowering drugs known as statins. Okay, CoQ10 might help prevent or treat certain heart conditions, as well as migraine headaches. Why do you think it's going to treat certain heart conditions? Because CoQ10 is needed in the heart. That's why they have found that it actually can help. CoQ10 has been shown to improve symptoms of congestive heart failure. Interesting. It also has been found in type 2 diabetes, and they say although more studies are needed. You guys ever heard of long-term statin therapy and type 2 diabetes? And I have seen people at the cusp, and they go on statin drugs, and now all of a sudden they're type 2 diabetic as well. Okay. Parkinson's disease have been shown to improve some symptoms of Parkinson's disease. Statin-induced myopathy, so muscle pain that's induced by statins. Some research suggests that CoQ10 might help ease the muscle weakness and pain sometimes associated with taking statins. Also, it may decrease migraines and also help to improve physical performance. But you know what they say? They say, we need more research. We need more studies. Here's why this is absolutely crazy and why I wouldn't be waiting around for it. Okay. Now, here's the first thing. Anytime they do a study, they're looking at one cause and they're looking at one solution. You got to understand that a lot of your health problems don't have one cause, and they don't just have just one solution. That's, in fact, if anyone was fatigued, throw some CoQ10 at them and it would get 100% of people better. But there's more than one reason why it's happening. So when they say we need more studies, here's what I ask, because I talked about this last week when I talked about thiamine and diabetic neuropathy, and they said this: we're not going to do any large randomized controlled trials because we can't patent thiamine. which means it's not a good investment to invest in some kind of long-term trial because we can't patent it and we can't turn it into a drug. So think about this when they say we need more studies. I'm like, okay, are they willing to do any kind of large scale randomized controlled trials when they can't patent the cure, when they can't patent the solution? And you have to understand, guys, that fatigue is multifactorial. And why is it multifactorial? Because the body doesn't work on just one thing, it works like a Swiss watch, guys. And here's the thing. Um, did you know that your big toe controls your heart? Do you guys know that? If you agree, type in there, I agree. My big toe controls my heart. A lot of people are like, no, my big toe doesn't control my heart. And I'm like, okay, so here's the thing. Then I'm going to take off your shoe. I'm going to take a hammer and I'm going to smash your big toe. I'm going to hammer your big toe. Then we're going to take your blood pressure after that. And what do you think happened to your blood pressure when I smash your big toe? It's going to go up. And I want you to think of that. If I came back and I kept smashing your big toe every single day, I did it every single day, your blood pressure is going to stay elevated because you have an injury that's going on. And at that point, you don't need all kinds of blood pressure medications. At that point, you don't need to be on a statin medication. What you need me to stop doing is stop hammering my big toe. Okay. And that's one of the things that is so important, especially when you talk that everything, guys, affects everything. And that's why you have to look at it. If you look at a Swiss watch and you open up the back, and it's like, which gear can you take out and for that Swiss watch to still record accurate time? You're going to say they're all important. And this is why anyone who says the gallbladder is not important, the appendix is not important. Yeah, just because you can still live without it doesn't mean that there's going to be an adaptive change that takes place that can lead to other issues that are going on. And that's why you have to look at all those body systems that are happening, because each one actually reflects off of the other one. And this is why, if you want to talk about influencing your skin the most, look at the gastrointestinal system. Big time, guys. So you have to look at the body as all disease is multifactorial, and you have to look at it like it's working like a Swiss watch. Okay. So Dr. Nate, what are some sources of CoQ10? Okay. What are some sources of CoQ10? I did this last week and I'm going to do it now. So make sure that you get a picture of this. Is that some of the best sources of CoQ10 is going to be liver glandular, also known as desiccated liver. It means it's a liver, it's dried, it's ground up, and it's put in a capsule form. And you'll get about 2.5 to 3 milligrams per every 2 capsules. Okay. Now, there's one that's a lot more concentrated. It's called Q powder. And all it is CoQ10 by itself, and it's 100 milligrams. And I will tell you this, when we have some people who are having a lot of issues with fatigue, and we figured out one of the reasons why, and you give them higher dose of CoQ10, they start to perk up fairly quickly. Okay. So these are going to be some of the sources of CoQ10. And guys, here it is right here. You go to store.thewellnessway.com and use code 5058. And yes, you can order. I believe that nearly every single person should be on desiccated liver or should be consuming liver every day. No, it's not toxic. The liver is not toxic. It doesn't store toxins. It filters them, but it doesn't store them, just so you know. Some people might need to be on higher doses of CoQ10, but please don't ask me if you should or not, because I haven't looked at your labs or anything like that, okay? The biggest thing that I want to tell you is disease is multifactorial, meaning there's more than one thing that's going on, especially when you're talking about fatigue. And if taking a supplement improved your symptoms, then chances are you're a blind squirrel that happened to find a nut. And I mean that in the most lovingly abrasive way, as well. And so for a lot of people, they found benefit by doing one thing. So then all of a sudden, everyone should be doing it. Then someone else takes it like, it didn't help me all that much, which is why I have some people are taking 25 to 30 supplements and they're still sick because they haven't gotten to the reason why they're sick in the first place. So if taking a supplement improve your symptoms, then don't be the blind squirrel that just happens to find a nut, because even a blind squirrel can find a nut every now and then. Okay. This is why I said it's multifactorial. If you look at the person that we just tested, elevated liver enzymes, a high C-reactive protein, low vitamin D, thyroid was just absolutely tanked, And actually, this is someone who has a fatty liver. So these are all indications that there's a fatty liver that's going on. And if we just said, let's just throw some CoQ10 at it, probably not going to help. You need to lower down that inflammation, figure out why it's happened, which is why we did some other testing that's going on, particularly food allergies and things like that. And in fact, we also have her on a very, I'm going to say, kind of restrictive diet. And I'm like, I'd rather put you on a restrictive diet and get better than to tell you you're fine, do whatever you want to do, and you stay sick. So there's a lot of different wheels that are at play here. So inflammation, other sources, medication induced as well. How about hormones and how about stress? Okay. So can hormones make you feel fatigued? They can make you feel fatigued, but they're not the reason why you're fatigued. So ask yourself this question. Hey, are you in menopause and are you having a rough go of it in menopause? Have you ever wondered why some person flies through menopause and feels better, feels great? And some people, they hit menopause and they're absolutely ransacked. Go ahead and go back and watch the videos I've done on menopause and your hormones and why people can have a really bad day when it comes to menopause. The other thing too is what are your testosterone levels at, particularly men, as well, because can low testosterone cause fatigue? Yes. However, I always will say this, hormones may make you feel tired, but they're not the reason why you're sick. Your cortisol rhythm and even your thyroid hormones can all play a role when it comes to fatigue and things like that. But let me reiterate this by saying hormones can make you feel tired, but they're not the reason why you're sick. Hormones respond to inflammation. As you get sicker, hormones get worse. That's one of the biggest things that I can tell you. And everyone wants to reach for hormone replacement therapy and things like that. It's like, get your health in order first and foremost. Now, the other one too is sleep, okay? Which I have skimped on it and I've had negative health consequences as a result. But what is the purpose of sleep, okay? What's the purpose of sleep? And if you truly understand sleep, you're going to understand that the purpose of sleep is to repair, which is also this, when people who have, they start to recover, they start to get better. And I'm like, okay, now you're ready to start exercising, which we don't tell people right away that you need to start exercising, but I'll tell them, here's what I'd like to see you start doing and start doing more of. But when you start exercising, you start tearing your body down a little bit, then the reward is that you need more sleep to repair. So the purpose of sleep is to repair. And who needs more sleep, men or women? Who do you think needs more sleep, men or women? And the answer is women. It's women. And the reason why is because your hormones are a lot more dependent on your adrenals, and you need sleep in order for your adrenal glands to be able to recover. Okay. So, how much sleep should women be getting? I will say this, 8 to 10 hours. How much sleep should men be getting? 7 to 8 hours. Okay. So women are going to need more sleep to build up their hormone reserve, especially when you're talking about the adrenal glands, especially after menopause, where most of your hormones are coming from the adrenal glands. That's why you need to make sure you're paying attention to your sleep. And men, you need to be getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep as well. And if that makes you angry, then all I can tell you is, because I don't have the time, to do that. And I've had people respond very negatively when I've said that. I'm like, great. It doesn't change the fact that you need that. And so if you don't get that, if you're not getting it consistently, then there's going to be a negative consequence. If you can't get sufficient sleep, don't be blasting your body with doing all kinds of weightlifting and crazy workouts if you don't recover, because it's just going to keep tearing you down, especially. Now, a lot of times people will ask me is like, Dr. Nate, please help me. I cannot shut off my brain. Okay. And this is going to happen more in women than men, because women tend to worry a little bit more, and you tend to be more like, you got 19,000 things on your brain. And men, we're just very simple. We just focus like on one thing, and then we forget about it. And we go back to bed. So what is causing you not to be able to shut your brain down? That can be mental stress. That can be poor GABA production, gamma aminobutyric acid, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter from your brain, or poor GABA reception, and also having a problem with your blood sugars. If you got a problem with your blood sugars, you're going to have your cortisol start to spike a little bit too early, which is why a lot of people with blood sugar issues, why they wake up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, or they're constantly having to eat because they have very, very poor blood sugar control. So again, ask yourself this question: why am I sick? Why am I fatigued? It can be mental, it can be chemical, and it can also be physical. Okay. So ask yourself this question again, just to just kind of bring everything together. How much inflammation is present? Do you have an infection that's going on? Are you on any medications? What about your hormones like testosterone, progesterone, your estrogens? Yes, there's more than one. How much stress are you under? What's your thyroid look like? Are you sleeping enough? And then, yes, iron can play a role, but I will tell you this: one of the biggest things that cause poor iron absorption is high amounts of mental stress. It is. So that's why you don't want to just blame iron all the time. So, what are some of the things that I can do? Okay. What are some of the things that I can do? Number one, work with a Wellness Way doctor to get the appropriate testing. Just go to thewellnessway.com. You can even type in someone who you can work in person with. Just type in your zip code and see if there's a doctor that's close to you. We do work remotely, which is why I want you to go to the inflammation webinar as well. Is work with a Wellness Way doctor to get the appropriate testing. There's number two, there's no magical secret formula. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. There's no magical secret formula. We work on getting your health back, and the natural response to health is that you don't have fatigue. And number three, please work with the Wellness Way doctor. Okay. Because if I say it once, some of you aren't going to believe me, so I'll say it twice. Now, on the journey towards health, guys, it is okay to ask for directions. It really is. It's not. Sometimes people have to just get their ego out of the way, and it's okay to ask for directions. Because again, if you're going from Chicago to Los Angeles, sometimes you need to ask for directions. It's okay because you might be going in the wrong direction. You're not going to realize it. So go from point A. The best way to go from point A to point B is in a straight line, especially. Now, here's what a lot of people are saying. They say, "Oh, doc, but I'm just so old. I'm just so old." And they'll say this at 35 years of age because we've been conditioned to believe that everything has to do with our genetics and our old age. And I asked this question: are you old or are you just beat up? Are you old or are you beat up? And if you look at this picture here of a boxer, he looks very beat up. Now, what if I told you is that that was at the end of the fight? That's the end of the fight, which is why I'm also going to say this is that the will to get better serves the skill to get better. The will to get better, the will serves the skill. And the reason why I say that is because this fighter right here, who is just bloodied and beat up, he wants to win the fight, but he's subservient to his skills as a fighter. Everyone wants to win on game day, but it's true that people who've developed the skills to win on game day are the people who are actually going to be successful. So just because you want to get better, you have to develop the skills to be getting better, because a lot of people have the will, but they haven't developed the skills or the mindset to actually get better. This is why I say, please, guys, work with a Wellness Way doctor. Get registered. If you're watching from the Chicagoland area, get registered for our next inflammation talk, which is going to be a week from Tuesday at 6:00 p.m. This is an in-person event. You have to be from the Chicagoland area to be there. If you are from Thailand, please don't register for this. It's not a remote event. If you are from the contiguous 48 states and you want to work with us remotely, then just go and watch the webinar. You'll see it pinned, if you're on Facebook, pinned to the top of the page. If you can find our Linktree profile, you'll be able to watch the webinar. But wherever you're at, you'll be able to find the webinar. It says work with me remotely, and you can watch the webinar, and you will see at the end, you will see a link that you can follow to schedule a discovery call with me in person. And yes, you will be talking to me on the phone. And that's why the webinar is absolutely awesome. There's a great story at the end with such a happy ending. I want you guys to make sure that you watch that as well. So get registered for that. You can watch that either on Tuesday or Saturday mornings, or you can watch it on demand. So if you want to watch it right now, just make sure you have an hour of your time so that you can watch the whole entire thing. So Fatigue, guys. Did you guys learn anything? I hope you did. Fatigue, guys, is multifactorial. There's more than one reason why that it's happening. But just like I said as well, is how much inflammation is present? Do you have an infection that's going on? Are you on any medications that actually could be causing fatigue? How are your hormones? What are the stress levels you have? What about your thyroid? Are you even sleeping enough? And yes, are you iron deficient? The only way to know is to get the proper testing, because as people start to remove inflammation and the reason why it's happening, then you'll see that their levels of fatigue will start to go down, and you'll start to see that their energy starts to go back up. And it's okay to ask for directions on your journey towards health. That's one of the biggest things. But how do you do that? Get registered for that inflammation talk. That will help you so much, and it will help point you in the directions as far as where you need to head as well. So guys, if you found this enjoyable, please make sure that you share this video, especially if you're watching on Facebook and things like that. I sincerely appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for joining me on Instagram as well. And guys, if you have a question and you don't want to ask it right here, just reach out to me. Via Messenger as well. I'll do my best to try to answer that as quickly as possible. Okay. So guys, be well, be blessed. And as I always say, remember who